2023. We're here in the Washington City Council chambers for our workshop meeting. I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So made, Mayor.
I have a motion by Ivy.
Second by Coates.
Second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll get started with our annual open and public meetings training. That will be given by our city attorney, Thad Segnor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to take a minute to connect to the monitors here. There we go. Looks like it's up. And I'm trying to train you on the same thing again this year, but a little bit differently. I'm going to remind you, though, state law requires that the mayor, the presiding officer, you'll see there in number 1, shall ensure that the members of the public body are provided with annual training on the requirements of this chapter. And so this is scheduled tonight so that we can comply with this element of state law. Tonight, the state has produced a little about 8-minute video that I want to show to you, and then we'll talk after that. Audio's not coming through. So let's see if IT can help us with that. So we've got video coming through, but not audio.
Might have to sit in between you.
Say that again. Where's my challenge is if I broadcast through here, I don't have audio anymore. It thinks that it's broadcasting, but it's not. We'll see if there's an idea. He's not responsive. So what I'm going to do, here comes a response here quickly. Yeah.
Well, Thad, I'd just like to recognize our Power Board members here for that next item, Mike Dinsmore and Dick Saunders. Appreciate you being here tonight and all the service that you provide. Got some important decisions to make, don't we?
Are the mics working?
Mics are working.
Oh, I didn't say that into Mike. I think I meant to turn it on and turned it off. So for the record,
Okay.
Mike Dinsmore and Dick Saunders, we appreciate you being here tonight. Both Power Board members.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm trying to follow his prompts here. Is there an audio here? Say that again. Is that in this list? Okay. Is that loud enough for you to hear? Okay, let's do that. Will that work? It's there for show. Here we go. Okay, let's give it a try.
what is the Open and Public Meetings Act? It's the state law that ensures government actions and deliberations are openly conducted. Before we continue, keep in mind that as an overview, and exceptions may exist based on your entity type. We focus on local government, not state requirements. When in doubt, read the law and consult with your legal counsel. So what's considered an open and public meeting? It's when a public body quorum, also known as a simple majority, meets to discuss or act upon government business. It includes the meetings sometimes referred to as workshops or executive sessions. Regular meetings, public hearings, electronic meetings, and emergency meetings are all open and public meetings. Open and public meetings don't include chance or social meetings. A public hearing is a type of open and public meeting where citizens have a reasonable opportunity to speak. Public hearings happen when a government adopts a budget, imposes or increases taxes or fees, or transfers money from an enterprise fund. These meetings have extra notice and posting requirements and won't be addressed in this video. An electronic meeting is a type of open and public meeting that's convened electronically, such as via phone or the internet. Remember, the governing body must adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance allowing and governing electronic meetings. OPMA adds additional requirements too. An emergency meeting may be held to discuss an urgent matter due to unforeseen circumstances. In order to hold the meeting, the best notice that's feasible is provided of the time, location, and topics to be considered. An attempt is made to contact all governing body members, and the governing body majority approves the meeting. An open and public meeting may be closed to discuss any of the following: a person's character, competence, or health, collective bargaining, litigation, certain real property transactions, including any form of a water right or water shares, with specific restrictions, security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, investigations of criminal misconduct, and private or protected information per the Utah Procurement Code, including trade secrets. A closed meeting may be held only if a quorum is present and the meeting was properly noticed. 2/3 of the governing body present at the meeting need to vote yes to close a meeting. Quick math lesson. 2 divided by 3 equals 66.7%. Let's say your governing body has 5 members present at the meeting. If 3 out of 5 members vote yes, that equals 60%, which is not equal or greater than 66.7%, which means you're 1 member short and would need 4 out of 5 members to vote yes. During a closed meeting, a governing body can't interview someone applying to fill an elected position, discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, discuss the character, competence, or health of a person whose name was submitted for consideration to fill a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment, or take a vote, unless it's a vote on a motion to end the closed portion of the meeting and return to an open meeting. When a governing body closes a meeting, the following must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes of the open meeting at which the closed meeting was approved. The reason or reasons for holding the closed meeting, the location where the closed meeting will be held, and the vote of each member of the governing body either for or against the motion to close the meeting. If a closed meeting is discussing a person's character, competence, or health, or security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, or several other exceptions, mostly related to state bodies or project entities, no recording or minutes are required. However, the presiding member needs to sign a sworn written statement stating such. If the closed meeting is held for any other reason, a recording must be made, which includes date, time, and place of the meeting, names of members present and absent, and names of all others, except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary to fulfill the original purpose of closing the meeting. Regular open and public meetings require 24 hours notice. The public notice includes the meeting agenda, date, time, and place. Public meeting agendas need to include reasonably specified topics to be considered, with each topic listed under a separate agenda item on the meeting agenda. The governing body may not consider a topic in an open meeting that wasn't on the agenda. If a new topic not on the agenda is raised by the public during an open meeting, the governing body may discuss the topic. However, final action may not be taken on the new topic during that meeting. Additionally, entities holding regular meetings scheduled in advance over the course of the year need to provide annual notice of the entire year's meeting schedule. The notice must include date, time, and place for each meeting. Notice is posted at the entity's principal office, or if the entity doesn't have a main office, at the building where the meeting will be held, and the Utah Public Notice website. Typically, posting on the Public Notice website is done by the records officer, recorder, or clerk. However, it's the governing body's responsibility to ensure notice is provided. State Archives has prepared a training manual and quick guide for owners and posters, as well as training videos that can be accessed at their website, archives.utah.gov. Written minutes and a recording are kept of all open meetings, with few exceptions. Written minutes include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of members present and absent, the substance of all matters, names of citizens providing comments, the substance of the comments provided, any information a body member requests be entered into the minutes or recording, and a record by individual member of each vote taken. A body with elected members must record each vote in list format by category for each action taken by a member, including yes votes, no votes, and absent members next to each member's name. A recording must be a complete and unedited record of all open portions of the meeting from beginning to end, and be labeled with the meeting date, time, and place. All or any part of an open meeting may be independently recorded by any person in attendance if the recording does not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Pending minutes means written minutes of an open meeting in draft form subject to change before being approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Pending minutes must contain a clear indication, such as a draft or pending watermark, that the governing body hasn't yet approved the minutes, and that the minutes are subject to change until the public body approves them. Approved minutes means written minutes of an open meeting approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Entities must establish and implement procedures for the public body's approval of written minutes. Public meeting pending minutes, approved minutes, and recordings are public records under GRAMA. Any individual who publicly presents information relating to an item on the public body's meeting agenda must provide a copy of the information for inclusion in the public record. Make pending minutes available to the public within 30 days. Within 3 business days after approving written minutes of an open meeting, make approved minutes and any public materials available at the Utah Public Notice website, the entity's primary office, and the entity's website. Within 3 business days after holding an open meeting, make an audio recording of the open meeting available to the public for listening.
Thank you for your patience with the technology. Hopefully, as you watch that video, it just confirms to you that our practices that we go through here are consistent with what the state's trying to train us on. There are some points that I wanted to discuss briefly as part of this training, and then just talk through any comments or questions that you all might have. The first one was regarding public hearings. You notice that it focused mostly on the public hearings that are statutorily required, but it did mention the occasion if we were in a public forum type hearing where a new idea came up. Who remembers what the video said we can do in that scenario?
We can discuss, but you can't make any action.
Correct. And what's the reason for that?
It's not on the notice.
Because we haven't given the public notice that you're going to make a decision on it. Yeah, and so it's interesting because the public policy for giving everybody notice of what the council's going to do actually becomes restrictive in that scenario. But for the same intent, which is if you're going to take a decision on something, the public should have a chance to know you're going to do that and come and see the public's business be discussed. And so that was just the one I wanted to mention. Another one is you hear a lot about motions and the body's the voice or the choice of the body. It takes a motion to approve an agenda. Takes a motion to hold an emergency meeting. Takes a motion to hold a closed session. Takes a motion to close a closed session. And so I just wanted to, as I was preparing, that kind of stood out to me. It's a decision and action of this body that really holds the business of the public. And so all of those require by state law that you make a vote and show the body's decision on those points. In the case of our council, if only 3 out of the 5 want to go to a closed session, we don't have enough, right? And so it's really important for both, I think, us, but also the public to recognize we're performing the business of the public according to the standards set by state law. One thing that our city recorder has done to take a lead on is our minutes. And some of you heard about that, but our minutes actually include entire recordings. Not too many years ago, we would just have written minutes that you would see in your packets, and then you would discuss as to whether they conform with the meeting as it occurred. Now we do have a written minute section, which is electronically written. It'll reference within the video so that folks can find the topic, find the timestamp, and go watch and see it all. And so our city's trying to keep up with technology while also complying with state law. The video also mentioned GRAMA, and while the open and public meetings law and GRAMA laws are entirely different sections of state code, they both come from the same public intent. And so I just wanted to show you here on this. You'll notice here it says in subsection 2, it is in the intent of the legislature that the state, its agencies, and its political subdivisions, A, take their actions openly, and B, conduct their deliberations openly. It follows then that everything that you do under that banner is also a record that's accessible via GRAMA. And so last year we had an interesting issue from the State Records Committee, and I just wanted to use part of this training to walk through that together and maybe see if it spawns some opportunities to learn together with a specific case study. So with a GRAMA request, it must be submitted to the city. The city has a portal in our different agencies as to how the public can make those. It's then screened and given a response. Typically the response is, thank you for your GRAMA request, we've received it. The fee for this is going to be blank, and we expect it'll take this much time to fulfill it. Something like that is a very typical response. The person then would pay the fee, and then we would go to work fulfilling their request. Sometimes our letter would say, you're asking for a record that the city classifies as private, protected, or confidential. Therefore, we're not going to disclose it to you. A good example that's not specific to anything that's happened in the city lately would be if somebody asked for body cam footage that came from a body cam of an officer inside a residence. Because the inside of a residence is a protected and private and confidential record that was obtained by our law enforcement, we would decline that request. We would tell them that that's not a public record that we release. They then they would have the right to appeal that. So that would most likely be my letter that says we're denying your request for the body cam footage of an inside of a residence, and I would list the state law and the different areas that support that denial. They would then have the right to appeal it to the city manager. The city manager would then schedule an appeal and give them a chance to come and appeal with him. If the city manager upheld the denial, they would then have the right to appeal to this website, to the State Records Committee. The State Records Committee employs attorneys who would then schedule a formal appeal. Usually there's attorneys on both sides, the city and the appellant's side. And they go there and they have a little hearing, make some arguments, and then the State Records Committee makes a decision. All of those decisions get published. And so part of this training, I wanted to just walk through those with you. And so I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and start here showing you. Oh, we're already on to 2023. I'm going to start in the year 2022 because that's what I prepared to start in. we're going to end up, even that one's not panning through. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom and just show you a few examples. Most of them are examples from law enforcement. So this bottom one here, you'll see it involved the Washington County Attorney's Office and a Mr. Putnam. Mr. Putnam, if we went and read it all, and you could click that blue link and go read it, he was appealing a denial. You'll see the summary right there. It looks like it was related to a criminal case, and he had grandma requested certain records. And as you come up through here, you'll see again another one that's related to a criminal prosecution. Here's the Utah Housing Corporation. Here's the University of Utah. This one was a very publicized case that I'm sure you saw in news. And so most of the grandma requests that end up at the State Records Committee are from fairly significant cases that get a lot of publicity. Most of those are from areas of the government that aren't city council related or planning commission or county commission. I can turn that off finally since we don't need that. So I wanted to share with you this 2136, Mark Allen versus Utah County. This case had some publicity. This is the case where an individual requested phone records from the commissioners of Utah County related to an issue that Utah County was considering, which was the sale or purchase of the Bridalveil Falls properties. Some of you might remember that. And what I'm going to walk through with you is the actual order and decision that occurred on that, because it's brief, but it also is very specific to the facts and the law. And I hope that might both educate and also stem questions about, your roles. So you'll see here, Mark Allen's the petitioner against Utah County. The facts, it says on December 23rd, Mr. Allen filed a records request with Utah County pursuant to grandma. Mr. Allen requested copies of all cell phone texts between the Utah County Commissioner, Bill Lee, and two specified individuals from January 1st to the date of the request. Mr. Allen requested copies of all incoming and outgoing messages related to Bridalveil Falls and public comments regarding Bridalveil Falls between November 1st and December 14th. In an email dated January 6th, the paralegal with Utah County Attorney's Office denied Mr. Allen's request for records of telephonic communication involving Commissioner Lee, stating that Utah County does not pay for his private cell phone, and subsequently, we do not prepare, own, receive, or retain the associated records. In the letter dated January 28th, Mr. Allen filed an appeal with the chair of the Board of the County Commissioners, stating that the records are of great interest to the public process of protecting a public asset, namely Bridalveil Falls. After no response was received by Mr. Allen from the respondent, Mr. Allen filed an appeal with the State Records Committee. On June 2021, the committee held a hearing where the parties were allowed to participate in person and electronically. After carefully considering the parties' arguments and the evidence presented, the committee issues the following decision and order. So that's the issue, right? This is the written decision. This is the final decision on this type of a legal question under state of Utah law. So the first point of decision, they talk about the legislature's intent. The legislature recognized the public's constitutional right of access to information concerning the conduct of the public's business. It is the legislature's intent through grandma to promote the public's right of easy and reasonable access to public records. Again, that's something we talk about every time we have training, and so this decision highlights that again. Number two, under grandma, a quote record is defined to include electronic data. Again, an interesting point to this particular scenario, right? That is prepared, owned, received, or retained by a governmental entity or political subdivision. And so again, prepared, owned, received, or retained by an entity or political subdivision. And two, where all the information in the original is reproducible by photocopy. It is then a record under grandma and is a public record. Okay, so that was important to the definition, especially to try and decide the appeal question in this one. On point 3, in the present case, County Commissioner is one of 3 elected county commissioners for Utah County. Mr. Allen requested copies of all cell phone texts between the commissioner and 2 individuals, copies of all incoming and outgoing messages related to Bridalveil Falls, and the public comments regarding Bridalveil Falls. Mr. Allen argued that decisions regarding the potential development of Bridalveil Falls is an issue of great public interest. Respondent, Utah County, argued that these records should not be considered records under GRAMA because, quote, Utah County does not prepare, own, receive, or retain private cell phone telephonic communications. So you'll see that paralegal's letter was using language within the law and taking a legal position. This decision will make it a determination as per Utah law as to what the state believes that is. Number 4, the committee has previously addressed issues involving communications by elected or appointed officials using personal email accounts. They refer to a case from Cedar Hills where the committee ordered release of email communications, quote, using whatever email address between Cedar Hills City Council members that were prepared, owned, received, or retained by Cedar Hills. And then they refer to a San Juan County case. Go to number 5 then. The committee reaffirms, this is the statement of law about electronic records. The committee reaffirms that a record prepared by a government employee within his or her capacity as a government employee may be considered a record subject to GRAMA. Additionally, in the case of government employees being an elected or appointed official, there should be a higher standard of transparency in order to allow the general public the opportunity to review how these officials, quote, conduct the people's business. I intentionally emphasize that because I know who I'm speaking to, but you'll see here the State Records Committee actually heightens the standard here when it comes to things like email and cell phones. And then number 6, based upon the evidence presented, the committee is convinced that any text messages sent or received by Commissioner Lee concerning Bridalveil Falls on his personal cell phone should be considered records subject to GRAMA. Even though such communications may have occurred through a personal cell phone, there is little question that communications by Commissioner Lee regarding Bridalveil Falls would be related to his position as a Utah County Commissioner and not related to his capacity as a private citizen. Accordingly, the committee finds that Commissioner Lee's communications in this case may be considered records, quote, prepared by a governmental entity, end quote, subject to GRAMA. And so it's an interesting conclusion, but essentially the state is saying, doesn't matter who owned the phone, because he was an elected county commissioner, because he was talking about an issue before the county commission to which he belonged, it's a public record. The county's paralegal was wrong, is essentially what they're saying. The county paralegal's legal position is not supported by their interpretation of state law.
That, can I ask a question? Right there?
Absolutely.
Excuse me. So if the commissioner refused to comply, citing that he disagreed, and he says, no, it's private, then that would create a whole other level of expectation, correct?
Yep, absolutely. If the commissioner was not willing to divulge those records, this opinion talks about that.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But what it talks about is the county's ability to make him comply. In theory, this requester could ask a court to go and require that he produce it. I've not seen a case where a court has decided whether that would be supported by state law or not, but that would be the next step. Very good question. Number 7, the second question presented to the committee, and this is where Councilman Ivey was going, is whether respondent, Mr. Allen, whether respondent Utah County possesses the requested records. So Adam Beck, the county attorney and legal counsel, argued that the records cannot be produced to Mr. Allen because Utah County does not possess the alleged records. In his written legal statement provided to the committee, Mr. Beck states that the attorney's office contacted the commissioner and the Utah County Commission office directly to inquire into the existence of any responsive records. Mr. Beck wrote that Utah County Attorney's Office, quote, has made every effort to comply with Mr. Allen's GRAMA request, end quote, and that a thorough search of the records that Utah County maintains has not yielded any responsive records, nor has any associated Utah County employees identified a record that would be responsive to the request. Mr. Beck further stated that there is no factual evidence to suggest that Commissioner Lee actually used his private cell phone to communicate with individuals named by Mr. Lee in his records request. So the county attorney took the position that we've checked everything we've got and nothing's there. Now, what they didn't have was his personal cell phone, right? So they checked everything else they had, but they didn't have his personal cell phone. So the number 8, after having considered the arguments and the evidence presented to the committee is persuaded that Utah County does not possess any records responsive to Mr. Allen's request. In other words, they don't have his personal cell phone. Without any persuasive evidence that Utah County possesses the requested records, the committee will not order Utah County to provide a record the committee does not believe Utah County possesses. And then this is really interesting. However, it is the committee's expressed hope that records management practices of governmental entities will be changed in the near future in order to allow the public to have greater access to electronic public communications by public officials acting within their capacity as public officials, regardless of whether the communications are made through public or private electronic devices. And I don't know what that last sentence means, but I think I know what it means, right? I think I know what the intent is. Anyway, and so that's the Bridalveil Falls case. The committee concluded that it was a public record, but that if Utah County didn't have that phone in their possession, they weren't required to go find it and maintain possession of it.
And their hope is that they understand that elected officials are held to a higher standard.
I think their hope
And they
is
should
that,
abide by
absolutely,
the Open to Public Meetings Act.
yep, that they should get their training and that they should, in theory, if you're going to conduct Bridalveil Falls deliberations or discussions, you do it on a public device. Or if somebody makes a grandma request, you give your private stuff in so that people can see the public business you are doing on it. That last sentence might lead to a law change. That might be something that prompts some changes that change state law. We haven't seen any of that yet. But it's very interesting to see how that all plays out, and especially as an elected public official who's expressly subject now to a higher standard than even, say, a city attorney or city manager who are employees, not just elected, not elected representatives. Have you got any questions or other discussion that you'd like to have on your training this year? Alrighty, I've covered everything I wanted to cover. As I watched that video the first time, I mostly was very satisfied that our city does a good job with our trainings and with the way we operate. Our council operates according to state law, and I'm proud of that. And so I'll just close with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sigmiller. Good training. Next item on the agenda is an update on the carbon-free power project. Power Director Rick Hansen will present on this. And again, just like to recognize our Power Board members that are here. Dick Saunders.
So feel free to ask them questions too. Mayor and Council, this is basically the same presentation that I did to the Power Board last night. There's a few changes that I made, and I'll point those out from some additional information that came out this morning. So, but the Power Board did review the recommendation and did recommend to the council to move forward with the carbon-free power project. So just have a few slides. This one's just to kind of remind you what the project is. It was probably about the 18th or 19th of January. UAMPS made a presentation here. I think most of you were able to attend. But the carbon-free power projects consist of small modular reactors. There'll be 6 77 megawatts each, so for the total project 462 megawatts. Washington City's current entitlement is 17.99 megawatts, basically 18. Commercial target operation date is 2029 for the first module and then 2030 for the remaining, and anticipated to be a 40 to 60-year type of power resource.
What percent of our portfolio will that be,
Uh,
roughly?
right now, our peak load is about 55.
Mm.
This time of year, we're between 12 to 18. So on the off shoulder months, it would actually be able to serve the entire load that the city has. Of course, again, this is 7 years out. Numbers are going to change. I would anticipate growth on that. So,
Rick, you might go into it, but can you just keep this in your mind, what it would cost to increase our participation?
okay. Yeah, and let's maybe hold that for just a minute, and
Yeah.
we'll look at it a little later. In fact, that was a discussion that was had with the power board last night as well. In late December, early January, the class 3 cost estimate was completed by UAMPS, NuScale, and Fluor. A run of, if you remember back, the target price was $58 and $20. I think that's important to keep track of the years here. It gets a little trickier, confusing, but that was the target. So basically, they did a cost estimate, run it through this big complex model and today's dollars, and then move it back based on inflationary indexes and takes it back to the 2020. The result of that model is that it did exceed the $58, and therefore UAMPS as a group has the option to withdraw and be reimbursed for virtually all of the out-of-pocket expenses so far. A lot of times in the project, they refer to it as an off-ramp at this point, and that's the period of time that we're currently in. UAMPS sent the notice out, I think, on January 4th, and then it goes to like February 17th, so we need to get a response. So the PMC did decide or recommend to move forward with the project, and we'll get into some of those details. And so what this off-ramp does is each participant has the option of 1, to continue with the project at the same or higher entitlement share, 2, to withdraw from the project, or 3, to reduce the entitlement share. And so why did the project costs increase? I don't think it should be any surprise. Your house in 2020 is a different value than it is in 2022 or 2023. So the same pressures that are going on there, that's probably the most relatable item. This is a very capital intensive project, and therefore is subject to, this was taken from these points were taken from the slide that UAMPS presented. And so anything from steel, concrete, electrical equipment, copper, basically you name it. I mean, if you went to the store recently and bought eggs, we have inflation on eggs, so everywhere you turn. And then one of the other areas that, again, it can be related back to what's going on in the housing market is the financing cost or interest has increased dramatically in that 2-year period as well. And since it is a highly capital intensive project, those interest rates have a dramatic effect on those interest costs. And so with that failure or the exceeding the ECT of the development cost reimbursement agreement, the DCRA, UAMPS was able to negotiate and have further discussions with NuScale. So the new price target is $89 in 2022 dollars, and that's still an attractive resource. If I had an $89 resource today that was 24/7 carbon free, all those kind of things, it would be a very good resource for the city. And again, I don't know how many of you seen there's different articles and things flying around out there. Not all resources are the same. The most common that people kind of bring up is solar. Solar's not there 24/7, 365. Yes, you can add batteries, that increases costs, but I've yet to see a solar project with a 24/7 battery. So you got to keep that in mind when comparing just the straight numbers. And so these 3 points here are probably the biggest points to take away in your decision. The green one is at the bottom, is one that was added basically this morning, and I'll talk about that just a little bit. But the amended development agreement, provides for us basically the same economic competitive test protection, but it's at $89 in 2022, or $89 per megawatt hour in 2022 dollars. And that economic competitive test would be run December 23, January 24, in that time frame. And the class 2 cost estimate will be more refined with better information as engineering continues, as the COLA is prepared. The second bullet point is probably, I think, one of the biggest protections or items that UAMPS was able to negotiate with NuScale. The new agreement or amended agreement provides for 100% reimbursement to the participants if subscription does not reach 80% of the total. So that would mean we'd have to have 370 megawatts of subscribed participation. So they could come in at $80 and not have the subscription. We'd still have that same off-ramp built in. There were a couple UAMPS members of the project that were still, they refer to it in several of the meetings as moving the goalposts. Basically, we could walk away today, but we're trying to decide what to do. So what they requested, and we had a PMC meeting this morning and passed a resolution that basically would automatically terminate the project if either of those two conditions failed. There is a provision that says unless a resolution is changed by unanimous vote. So if one member didn't go along with that change, then the project would trigger the reimbursement provisions.
So Rick, but what is that saying, that it would cancel it if we don't meet the 80%? But is that in the next off ramp?
That 80% has to be achieved by the end of the year, basically.
Or else it's dead?
Yes.
So
Now,
that's
no.
really good new information. How does NuScale feel about that? Is there any interaction with NuScale about the?
This is really in control of the PMC side of things, and so it's in compliance with the 2 bullet points in red. So I don't know how much discussion, honestly, that Mason's had with NuScale on it, other than it would obviously put them on notice that this is a very strong language, if you will, that if these aren't achieved, will trigger the reimbursement clause.
I think it helps us a lot because the reimbursement clause will be triggered. You won't get a unanimous vote, I would assume, unless something
Probably
major
not.
happened.
In fact,
One person could
right.
trigger the end of the project.
And I actually brought that up in our meeting today. What if it comes in at $90 and 369 megawatts? The way this language reads, the project would still terminate, but there could be some mechanisms if a group wanted to, say, pick up Washington's subscription and do those kind of things. But it would be a whole different discussion and a much more difficult task to pull off. And there was probably at least, I would say, 2 other members that without this resolution, they may not have stayed in. So. So again, those are the 3 big points. Again, the last one happened 10 o'clock this morning. So where are we at? The current subscription is 116 megawatts. So doing the math, 254 additional megawatts of subscription are needed to reach the 370. UAMPS is obviously their number one focus is going to be getting subscription. NuScale has a very vested interest at this point as well on the subscription side, where they didn't have it quite to the same level before because that wasn't tied to their reimbursement. There's some good fumes going on right here. So to give you just a little summary, and this was updated as well. You can see the names of the cities or utilities that have elected to move forward with the project on that first green bullet point, which added, I think, 3 or 4 from last night, 3 or 4 more. Los Alamos actually approved to increase their subscription from 8.6 megawatt, or excuse me, from 2.2 to 8.6, so they actually went up 6.4 megawatts. Morgan has elected to withdraw, which is 1.4 megawatts. So between those two, there's a net still increase of about, what's that, 5 megawatts. And again, like I previously said, the Power Board last night recommended to move forward with the project, or recommended the council that they adopt the continuing resolution. What's going to happen in this next year is basically a continuation of what's been going on in 2022, which is preparation of the COLA information to turn over or to submit to the NRC at the federal level. So additional engineering work will be done, estimating, and those kind of things. And that's really a monumental milestone for the project to be able to submit that to the NRC. Again, it'll be a Class 2 ECT and ETC run at that time, December 23, January 24. Power Board meeting, I had some wrong dates in there, so that's why those are in green. I just corrected those. And when we get into the percentages on the next slide, as people come into the project, our percentage will drop. And hopefully these 3 top bullet points won't be confusing, but I think it's important to understand. If the city were to withdraw by ourselves for convenience, it would cost the city that we would owe UAMPS back $4.4 million in the next 12 months, is how things are written. And if you looked in real gory detail of the packet that was sent out, I don't know if any of you took the time to look at that. There's an exhibit called Exhibit X, which shows what our exposure would be if there was no additional subscription during this next period. And basically would be 15.5% of it. The exposure could be as high as 13.8. But again, it's very unlikely, and with that last resolution today, it's virtually impossible to hit that level because it would trigger basically an automatic reimbursement.
Can you explain that again? Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you saying that? I think the thing that I just keep getting confused in my mind of, we get, like you said, there's 4.4 that's we would be responsible if we said, hey, we're out today. But then we have off-roads that we can take, and we have to pay at those times too because we've been part of it.
The off-ramps trigger if UAMPS withdraws as a group. If a single entity
Well, let's take Morgan, right? Morgan dropped off. Are they paying a fee to UAMPS now?
Yes,
So they'd have to pay their fee.
proportionate share, I don't know what their percentage is, but like say ours is 15, I think they were 1.4 megawatts, so they'd be roughly a little less than a tenth of ours, so
Okay.
they'd probably be in the $300,000-$400,000 range.
So what are you saying by that the cost share for the COLA development would be 15.5%, which is 13.8 million? Where,
Let me, hopefully this helps. Jump over here. So
I hope I'm not the
basically
only one that's confused.
the 15% comes from the ratio of our 17.99 versus how much subscription is there. So we owe basically 15% of what's spent, and
So we're 15% of the subscriptions right now,
correct.
but why would we have to pay that? Why are you saying we'd have to pay the 13.1?
If we withdraw today, because that's what we've committed to do. There's been costs incurred to the project, and so you can't just walk away without.
So the only way that the reimbursement agreement kicks in is if the entire project stops, not just one
So,
participant.
but Morgan's paying their 1%. I guess I'm confused why one, if you go back to your other slide, why one's 13 million and one's
Okay, let me show you.
4 million.
So up through where we currently are today, roughly there's $29 million. So 15% of 29 million is this 4.5.
Okay.
And then it was probably 2017. At the early stages of the project, they did collect some fees, and so the city's paid roughly 100,000, and this is where the 4.4 comes from. So if you do that same percentage, this next year, you can see it's a pretty
Okay. Because we're doing so much additional work this year.
correct.
So
And
because we
that's if-
decided not to get off and we're moving forward, if we, by the end of next year, if we choose to get off, it's going to cost us a lot more money.
So the 13.8 that they put in the Exhibit X is that same ratio, but that's a withdrawal for convenience if UAMPS continues and no additional subscription. Again, with that other resolution we did this morning, that's, I wouldn't say impossible, but very close to impossible to have happen.
So if it fails, say it can't move forward, what does Washington City pay?
I don't have the specific number. The only thing that we would have to pay that's not part of the reimbursable expenses are some administrative costs that UAMPS incurs to manage the project, that because of the DOE funding, they wanted to keep, they call it non-reimbursable, just for accounting reasons.
But it's minor.
But it would be, yes, it wouldn't be anywhere near that. So what I wanted to show you is the next line. So this is all the same, but if we get to 370 megawatts, our percentage goes down to 4.8. 4.8 of the 89 is basically 4.3. Take off that, would actually be about 4.2 a year from now if the project reached 370, met the ECT, and we withdrew by ourselves. So really, we would potentially save money by staying in. That was the,
Can I ask a question?
you bet.
Have they gone through, or if not all the way through, how far are they through the permitting process, permitting and approval from the government?
Well, what they're working on, the COLA, is the combined, or the construction and operating license application. That's what the COLA stands for. So that's exactly what they're working on, that at the end of this year, they would have that package to hand over to the government to look at.
Okay, and then do they have any projected timeline for approval if they get
3
an
years.
approval? 3 years? They can start construction?
Takes
or-
roughly 3 years to get through the NRC approval process right now. I guess they could speed it up, but that's the current timing. There are some activities that are nuclear related that they're working on that they could, like site grading, some of the outbuildings that wouldn't be directly tied to the reactors, could possibly be started earlier.
And
So
I've got one other question. Did Morgan give any reasoning behind their,
they felt like they felt like the goalposts had been moved, and in their mind, we should have canceled the project because the ECT failed. So
So after Morgan pulled out, I actually looked into New Scale Power, kind of tracked their stocks, because that's a pretty good indicator of what, you know, the rest of the world thinks of New Scale Power and their viability. I think it's interesting about it when you chart their historical stock quotes. One of the hottest times in our history was last August and September. Remember how the heat stayed on so high even into September? That's the highest quotes for stocks of that company's ever had. But then all of a sudden it cools down, and their stocks have stayed steady even with the recession, or whatever perceived recession there is. You know, the different people say different things there, but even after that heat, it stayed high and it stayed consistent. Last summer, I was able to visit the New Scale site on that trip. It was valuable. We went into Corvallis and spent several days there touring the site and facilities, try to get a grip on how big it is. And if I'm wrong, tell me, because I really want to understand this as the rest of the council does. But it seems to me like the thing that's holding this up and driving the price up are these permits and okays from the federal government, because a lot of these technologies have been tried and tested in bigger scale for decades.
correct.
And it just seems like that, you know, for good reason, they want to make sure that everything is taken care of. But when I was there, talking to the engineers on site there in Corvallis, you know, they're sure, they're positive that things are good, that the safety things have been taken care of, but time and testing has to flesh that out. But for me personally, after seeing the stocks, how they rebounded, they went down a little after that heat, but they've stayed steady. They've stayed good. And in light of these things, I think that helps me to have confidence in this project, because I've maintained one question through this entire process, and that is, if it's not nuclear, tell me. It's not going to be solar panels or wind. You know, what else? What's the other idea? So to me, it's not only a good idea. I think it's really the only viable to sustain that amount of electricity that you need, that's dispatchable, that you can count on, whether the sun's shining or not.
I agree. Thank you. No, you were very accurate. So again, this is in, I guess, text form of what that little spreadsheet I put together kind of means. So basically, to me, worst case, we're at the same point we are today. Next year, and we'll have a lot more information at that point in time. Again, and it also illustrated the point on as others come in, our percentage drops. So basically that net increase of 5 megawatts between Los Alamos raising their subscription and Morgan dropping out, our subscription is no longer the 15.52, it's 15.25 or whatever that works out. There are some of the smaller cities that are at least contemplating reducing. There was a couple, I think, maybe got a little over aggressive up front. And so it may make sense for them to get more in line with what their load is.
But with our 17 megawatts, I mean, can we use more? Because we paid a lot more than 89. Because just for the council, I felt like the goalposts have moved ever since I got on council. Every year they come back with a new price and something's changed. So I can see what Morgan's saying, but I still haven't seen a better solution, like Councilman Ivy said. So I'm sitting here going, if there's not a better solution, Even if the goalposts move, it's still the better option out of any of it. So my question is, do we need more? Like, I don't want to overcommit if we don't need it, but if we can use it, it's better than the other options that are out there.
Well, the couple of comments to that. I think first, like I said, right now during the off summer months, we're probably between 12 to 20 megawatts. And so with our other resources, if we had this today at that level, we would have excess during probably 8 months of the year.
Can we sell our excess?
Yes.
Okay.
And it just depends on what that costs versus what you get out of it. And that's a whole nother story that we'll probably have here before too long again, because
Or is it worth paying for extra versus paying a massive check like we've had to the last couple months? That's the thing that it's like.
correct. That's and
Because I'm in the frame of mind of I'd rather have fuel in my car and have extra and just pay a little more and not use it all. But that's me. But I know it's different because it's wasted after you don't have it.
right. Well, and in fact, you hit it on the head. That's the same discussion that I think it's fair to say the Power Board had last night. And one of the requests they had at some point that we have maybe a work session to discuss that in a little more detail. Right now, I'm recommending us just to kind of stay status quo. I think there'll be plenty of opportunities. If we want to increase, we can. I mean, we could send a letter to increase virtually at any time, because all it does is it increases our subscription and lowers everyone else's percentages. So,
But do you think it'll help get other subscriptions on board if they're seeing the other cities do it or not? I'm just asking. 'Cause sometimes it's like, oh, they're doing it. They see it's a good idea. Maybe we need to relook at ours.
potentially it could. Obviously it's, having Los Alamos. I think they actually reduced last off ramp, so they've kind of went down and then back up.
At one point, we were at 20 megawatts, but we also put a dollar cap on
And
that shrunk it to 17. And so,
And that's why the 17.99,
Yeah.
it was a function of how we wrote the resolution.
I think as we start to see subscription come on, that's the time to really jump in and help kickstart it a little bit. But we could go up a couple more megawatts, and it wouldn't. I don't
So-
know that would help the project at this point, but
I'm saying don't commit until we see some better progress from UM.
let's just see what the subscription does as we go along.
We're the second highest in the project right
At this
now.
point, we're just a percentage of the overall. So if we commit more right now, it just, I don't know that there's a huge benefit at this point. I think we can always get more later until we get to that 100% subscription number.
And one of the protections we have is, as say company X comes in and says, hey, I want the 200 and whatever megawatts. The PMC has the opportunity or has to approve them coming in. So we could make one of the conditions, say if somebody come in and said, I want everything that's left. And we could say, well, we'll approve you, but we'll give those that have been in it for 6 or 7 years one more chance to step up if they want a little more. So that's all within, I think, the PMC's purview.
And that would be fantastic, right?
it would
If
be
another
terrific.
utility or if a municipality or multiple municipalities came in, because I'm all in favor of moving forward with this resolution and staying the course, because, we have no viable alternatives. But the concern is we're at about a third of the subscriptions collectively that we need by next January. So that to me is
They've got a big
where,
task.
where and what is, and maybe put your UAMPS hat on for just a minute as a board of directors member there. What do you see UAMPS doing to attract additional subscription, and what can we do to help? Because some of the larger participants are in our local municipalities. I mean, what can we do to help buoy up subscription? Because we need that in order for this to take off.
Can you put that list of the ones that are in the subscription?
For this one?
Yeah, I just think it's funny that our neighboring cities aren't in it.
So we do
Well-
have, I can tell you that,
Hurricanes will be on board.
And-
Their
and I
meetings
believe-
just haven't happened yet.
and Santa Clara as well, as I
Yeah.
understand. And so I'm not sure if St. George has participation or not, but I know that,
No.
I think Hurricane even maybe has a little more participation
They're-
than us.
They're at 20 and we're at basically 18. We're the two highest in the project right now.
And I think Santa Clara remains supportive. We saw them at
Yeah.
the meeting the other night, but that's kind of where we're at, collective subscription at around 120 megawatts. How do we bridge the gap to the 360 or 370 that we need?
Well, I think certainly, as you rub shoulders with other cities, and encouraging them to take a look at it closely. One of the other areas that UAMPS is looking at is potentially, it could be a private investor come in as an owner. And then they would turn around and take that commitment, and then they would sell it at a higher price. So it wouldn't be 89, it might be 110.
They would broker the power,
Yeah.
essentially.
And so maybe I've kind of kidded around, maybe Elon Musk comes in and buys the rest and he could turn around and sell it for a profit. And so there's that option. They're looking and having discussions with investor-owned utilities, as well as the initial focus was more on public power entities. But I think they're going to broaden that perspective. So that's kind of where they're coming from. And so the reason why there aren't more on this list is because of the timing of meetings. I think there's one or two more tonight at probably the same time we're talking. There's more next week. And as far as I know, and on the PMC meeting today, nobody said we're on the fence kind of thing. Idaho Falls had their meeting this morning. I haven't heard what the results were of that. So anyway, I just updated that as these are ones that have officially approved that similar resolution. So.
Well, and I think the director, when he came and presented, I think he hit it right on the head. You get that right business development person who speaks that language. And but they have to move quickly to get that right person, right? To go out and talk to these municipalities, to talk to these public.
And the job is posted as
So,
we speak, and so.
Yeah, that needs to happen, soon, because like I said, you get that right person who speaks that language, who talks that talk, who's able to present graphically and statistically the numbers that are coming. Like I just did a quick Google search, and you look at the UK, and nuclear power in the UK for new nuclear projects is anywhere between $150 to $300 a megawatt hour. And so that's coming here. It's starting in Europe, comes to the UK. It comes here because of the commodity prices, and you'll start to see that competition. You may see the commodity prices come down a little bit, but with all of the competition that's happening for power, for everything that we're seeing, I don't know that that'll change a whole lot, but
Yep.
Possible.
So I guess just in summary, you guys are well up to speed on things. I mean, August 2020, February 21, September of 22, December of 22. Unfortunately, January of 23 isn't probably going to be quite as bad as December, but it's not going to be a great month either. So do you think about if you had a good base load for a 40-year period? And that's one advantage of the nuclear is it's very capital intensive up front, but the fuel cost remains pretty stable once you get the plant built. So in red there, it's staff and the power board's recommendation to approve the resolution to continue at the current level. And I think it would be prudent at the right time to give us some time to look at in a little more detail on maybe where that subscription, whether we should do 2 or 5 more, and maybe have a joint work session with the power board to kind of kick that around in a group. And because like I say, at some point it's hard because our load changes so dramatically from off peak to peak times. And you know, if we signed up for 50, that would be great, but what do we do with that other 30 or 40 the rest of the year? And we're involved in other projects as well, and so we just have to try to balance.
But is
that.
there other areas that we could eliminate that aren't producing as well, that it costs more money?
As far as what resources we have
Yeah.
right now?
I'm like, say we say, let's buy more of this, and we couldn't get rid of it in the short term, but in the long term, we potentially could sell some of it off and just have more of our eggs in one basket, which probably isn't the best thing, but I'm just
Right.
saying, if it all depends. I guess I'll say, let's just keep it all on the table and keep looking at it, because I know you
Well, I
do a
think
good
that's good.
job. I hate that we don't buy enough. I'd rather just buy extra. That's how I feel
Well,
right
and
now.
I think that's part of the concern too, is that some of the contracts we have a pretty good deal. And as they fall off, that's going to be a challenge to replace those
Correct.
at competitive rates. So
And one of the bigger projects that we have ownership in through UAMPS is the Nebo Payson project. It's right now, what is it, 25 years old? And so at some point, we either got to do a complete redo of that, or it'll be retired too. And so there's a lot of moving pieces in that, and we do have purchase agreements. We've got the solars that will be coming on that are 25-year agreements. And so, like I said, it'll take a little more time probably to maybe pin that ideal number down. And if you can tell me what growth is going to do and temperatures are going to do, that would be helpful. Okay.
we leave that to the power board.
There is in the resolution, just so you're aware, there's language that if our percentage, it's a percentage increase over the 15%, that's to address wiggle room. If somebody was to withdraw, we don't have to go through the board approvals all over again within a tolerance level, reasonable tolerance. And so that's in there. And I think that's it. If, you know, any more questions?
Comments, questions for Mr. Hanson?
Mayor, I don't have a comment or question, but I have maybe a fun fact I could share. So 530 coal-fired plants, 68% or 360 of them have been closed in the last 2 years.
Was
That
that a
kinda
fun
gives-
fact or a depressing fact?
Well, I call it
I would
fun
think
because I
that-
want it to be, you know, but it's a fact nonetheless, you know, 530, 360 of those have been closed. So that's 68%. So you can see the trend, you can see the current administration, what their interests are. And it's perplexing to me to see these facilities close without something viable to take their place, because we all know what happens when some supply crashes into demand, you know, that kind of thing. So-
And that's exactly what's happening, you know, at different times of the year. So.
I was a little shocked to hear you say that Nebo will close someday, because I remember when we were celebrating Nebo when I was on the council, because it was a modern generation plant. How many coal plants has Washington had a relationship with that are now shuttered? I know that we had Navajo. Any others?
Well, our relationship with coal has never been a direct one. It would be through power purchase agreements. I know IPP and Hunter are both, we aren't participants in those. However, they're having coal issues. They're having supply issues. And again, it goes back to supply and demand. When they have issues, now those people that normally would take power from those plants, now they're going to have to find it somewhere else. And so demand goes up, supply's going down. The drought and the hydros, same thing. We've had those discussions. Those aren't fun facts.
I'm picturing some windmills up above Green Springs, maybe? Think about,
GWC project.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
When are you campaigning
It
again?
didn't come from me, no.
All right.
Well, thank you. And,
This has been a fun discussion. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. We'll see you at our next meeting.
okay.
On that note, call for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Henderson, second by Coates. All in favor?
I.
We stand adjourned until 6 p.m.
Go to
All right, we'll get this started. We appreciate having a few guests in the audience tonight. If I'm doing my job right, we'll finish with plenty of time to get down to Hurricane at Crimson Cliffs basketball game that starts at 7 o'clock. So there's only one person cheering for the Tigers here, Drew, and the rest of us are cheering for the Mustangs. Oh. Okay, so today is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. We're here at Washington City Hall in the City Council chambers. As always, our meetings are, you're welcome to attend live or watch them streaming at washingtoncity.org/meetings. Our invocation tonight will be by Council Member Ben Martinson, who has the new committee assignment to serve with the Interfaith Council. Councilman?
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this wonderful day. We're grateful for this privilege and this blessing and this opportunity that we have to meet in these council chambers tonight. Father, we are grateful for this free land in which we live and for the freedoms and the liberties which we enjoy. Father, we ask that we might be able to continue to make decisions and do thy will according to the liberties and the freedoms that we enjoy so that we can continue to enjoy those. Father, we're grateful for all of our many other wonderful blessings, grateful for this beautiful land in which we live, and we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to serve. Father, we're grateful for the individuals who are here tonight and grateful for their service and their willingness to stand up for what they believe to be right. Father, we are again grateful for all of our many blessings, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Councilman. I have asked our friend Sherry Clark if she'd come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, Council, I'll turn to you now for an approval of the agenda with the note that we do not have need for a closed session tonight.
I'll make the motion we approve the agenda as outlined for February 8th.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates,
Second.
second by Councilman Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. I have two really brief announcements, and then I'll look to you to see if there's anything that I may have missed. Valentine's on February 14th. Don't forget that. And President's Day is on February 20th. City Hall will be closed that day. Council, did I miss anything, or is it just unusually slow for the next 2 weeks? Of course, we did have a great council retreat doing some strategic and budget planning, so we've been pretty busy the last 2.5 days. But
I do have one announcement, Mayor, if you're done.
yes, please, Councilman.
So the Love Where You Live group is doing a trash cleanup, and Jeremy got and went to the meeting for me because I had some conflicts, so I appreciate that, Jeremy. And it's March 24th at what time did they say, Jeremy?
7:30 to 8:30, 9 o'clock-ish.
We're gonna clean up Buena Vista from exit 13 as far as we can for an hour or so. Just so if any of you want to come, you should come. It's a Friday, so I mean,
We'll meet at the Grapevine Trailhead. We'll have bags and the vests for people that would like to come. We'd like to get members of the public out like we did a couple times ago.
And then just for the city record, if you'll get that on the city calendar, on the council calendar, and then reach out to IT to get that promoted a little bit. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3. Any declarations of abstentions and or conflicts? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, which is a proclamation. And first of all, I really appreciate each member on this council, but a little history on this proclamation is I think this kind of stirred with Councilman Martinson and Councilwoman Casperson reaching out to me and having the insight to say, hey, let's make February Family Leadership Month. And Mayor, would you do a proclamation? And I said, I'd be happy to do that. So this is a joint mayor and council proclamation. I really appreciate the edits from both council members that worked hard on this. And I get to do the easy part, which is just read it. But really the heavy lifting was done by this group. So I'll go ahead and read that now. Okay, Washington City Family Leadership Month proclamation. Whereas strong families and healthy child development are the foundation for successful communities and societies, and whereas the strength of our community depends on the continued success of our children and youth, and whereas each parent is inherently responsible for the raising and educating of their children, and whereas Washington City values and respects the fundamental right and duty of parents to direct the care, upbringing, supervision, and education of their children, and whereas Washington City parents continue to form vital relationships and partnerships with policymakers, leaders, and stakeholders to build stronger and safer communities for children. Therefore, I, Mayor Cress Staley, along with the Washington City Council, do hereby express sincere gratitude for the parental leadership in our community and proclaim February 2023 as Family Leadership Month, and call upon all Washington City citizens to recognize and support the vital contributions that parents and families make to our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of Washington City, Utah, this 8th day of February 2023. Council, any thoughts?
Well, just thank you for allowing that to move forward. And it came from citizen request and citizen input, so appreciate it.
I think that's how it's supposed to work up here, right? Anything you'd like to add, Councilwoman?
I feel like the proclamation says it all, so I appreciate, you doing this, and for the residents who reached out to us to get this, because I think it's really important.
Thank you. Sherry, come forward. You get mayoral privilege. Come forward, just state your name and tell us a few words.
My name is still Sherry Clark. I just wondered where we can get a copy of this so that we can spread it out over.
I'm going to sign and give this one to you.
Okay.
And then I'm going to sign an official one that goes in the records. But you're welcome to keep this one right here.
We thank you very, very much for listening to us and doing this. So important.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you. We can get you a...
Put it in the electric bill we're asking.
Let me give that some thought. It's not a bad... Let me give that some thought.
It'll be after the fact.
Yeah, it would be a little bit after the fact, but that's an interesting thought. Yeah. Yeah, and then we write those 2 or 3 weeks before it's published, but I haven't forgotten that. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for your article about Exit 11.
Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you. Okay, we'll keep moving along. I can find my right tab here. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the consent agenda. Call for motion to approve that.
Mayor, I did review the minutes and reviewed the board audit and prepared to make a motion of approval for the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivy, second by Councilman Martinson. All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to item 6. This is an ordinance. 6A is consideration to approve an ordinance for a partial road abandonment of 11.25 feet located at approximately 35 east, 200 south in our new development project Manager John Hinkie will present on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At least I'm up here now for the right topic. The applicant is requesting approval of a road right-of-way vacation plat for a portion of 200 South, located at the northeast corner of Main Street and 200 South. Plat would vacate approximately 11.25 feet on the north side. Public Works has reviewed it. We recommend approval. One of the items we'd like to see in the future is like when we're doing a block like this, to try and do the entire block at once. It just helps clean things up for staff and everybody in the future. So with that, we have two conditions: that we maintain a 10-foot public utility easement along this, and then that the owner agrees not to contest the establishment of any future improvement districts in the area. So any questions that I can answer?
Questions for Mr. Hinkie?
Yes, is that 10-foot easement, is that already in place for other property owners along 200?
It would be on their existing property line, but now we would move it out to the new property line.
Thank you.
Mr. Gibson, are you comfortable with this? Come on forward, please. And then if you just state your name for the record. We all know you, but
Well, I just come up and visit with Drew, and Drew says it'd be, before I stored split it into 4 lots to evacuate that street. And so I said, okay.
Okay.
Tried.
So we'll get this job started.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Council, any further discussion? If not, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Just one, can I just make a comment, Councilman, before you make the motion? I apologize. I just wanted to compliment our staff on working with Mr. Gibson. And this is something that came about because of good common sense approach to solving a problem, and I appreciate it. Sorry, Council.
Well said, Councilman.
I'll make a motion that we approve the partial road abandonment of 11.25 feet on approximately 35 east, 200 south.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates,
I'll second that, Mayor.
second by Councilman Henderson. Let's go roll call on this ordinance. Martinson?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Ivy? Casperson?
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Item 7. Thank you, John. Appreciate your work and on this and on so many other things. Item 7 is a resolution. This is item 7A, consideration to approve a resolution for the continuation of the participants' entitlement share under the Carbon-Free Power Project Power Cells contract for Phase 1B of the licensing period for the Carbon-Free Power Project and related matters. And for those that are just tuning into this meeting, we spend a good 45 minutes or longer in our work session reviewing updates on this continued project. And I'll let you take it from here, Power Director Rick Hansen.
Well, I probably don't have a whole lot more to add other than if you have any additional questions. If not, I think we covered quite a bit in the last meeting.
I appreciate your efforts, Rick, on this. I just think this is the best option for the city moving forward with the coal plants going down, and I think this is the right direction to go and keep moving forward, and hopefully they can get the subscriptions they need so that we don't have any. I just think it's going to get worse if we don't do something. So I'm glad we were able to foresee that we needed to do something earlier, because this project's been going on for about 8 years, and hopefully we can get to the finish line. So
That would be great.
Mayor, I'd just add to that I wholly see this would be irresponsible if we weren't a part of this.
This helps us to secure some good, reliable power for our city in the future, and appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Well said. Okay, council, we're ready for a motion. Who would like to take a stab?
I'll take a stab, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve the entitlement under the resolution to continuation of the participation with the Carbon-Free Power Project contract for Phase 1B and the licensing period for the Carbon-Free Power Project and related matters.
Right, we have a motion by Councilman Coates,
I'll second that.
second by Councilman Martinson. This is a resolution. We'll go roll call. Casperson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
The resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Let's get it to the finish line.
Really hope so.
Thanks, Mr.
Do our
Hanson.
best.
Item 8, report of officers from assigned committees. Councilman Martinson, can we start on your end?
Yeah, the only one that I would have to report on, you took away from me, so, no, I'm joking.
I would like to have him have one last opportunity to share about this since he, you know,
Self to sleep.
yeah. So I'll let you take it this time.
Thank you. Youth Council. They're such a great group of youth that we have serving on Youth Council. They did the dog run, the fun run, in conjunction with the 5K and the half marathon. And they just do such a fabulous job with those kids. And there weren't a lot of kids there. I think there were like 13 or 14 kids, but all the kids had fun. Youth Council had fun cheering people on. And they were a fun group up at the retreat as well. So they always are.
You, Councilman Henderson.
Mayor, I don't have anything other than I think our meetings over the last few days were very productive and in a lot of different ways. And I'm excited to see what happens in the near future in Washington. And I think we're heading in a good direction. So appreciate all of you and your good work.
Well said. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Colts.
I have nothing to report because my committee, Rick just did it all for me. And so, and my other committees, I have a meeting on Monday. So next council meeting, I probably will have something to talk about.
Great. Councilman Ivy.
You know, we could spend the rest of the evening discussing our, no filibuster, discussing the legislative policy. There's a lot of bills that we're watching very closely, ones that will impact the city, and we're working with our lobbyists as well as our own efforts here, myself and Jordan Hess. So we'll stay updated on that. You've been getting some updates, some emails when there's something that I feel like I'd like your direction on as a council, but a lot going on there. We're approaching the halfway point. But I did have the opportunity last week to go out to Crimson Cliffs High School and meet with Officer Nash, who is the SRO. That's our police resource officer for the school. And when I got there, he was in the lunchroom, and so we were able to. Hadn't been in a sophomore lunchroom for a while. That was interesting, but I was able to, as I was visiting with Officer Nash, the principal Rusty Taylor and Superintendent Larry Bergeson came out, and we talked a little bit about the school and what an intricate, important part of it is for our city, and the compliments that were forthcoming from those two gentlemen on behalf of Washington City Police Department, and specifically the SRO officers that have served there. They provide a service that is vital to the functionality of that school. And the thing that it's a reoccurring comment, I say it all the time because I truly believe it, is that our officers our department, they're not police officers, they are service-oriented police officers. They always look on how to make the community better, how to impact individuals' lives for the better. And when I saw Officer Nash commenting back and forth with the youth of that school, I've seen that he was very respected, and there was definitely respect from the students, but yet he related with them. I was able to finish that lunch, and we went on a short drive just there in the parking lot and caught a couple of guys seeing who could burn out their tires the longest. And he had a very serious conversation with both of them. And we got back in the car, and I reminded him, I'm glad that you handled it that way, because I may have been guilty of that when I was in high school. But anyway, he had a good conversation with them, and they promised not to ever do it again. But after that, we went on a tour of the school, and I said, of all the places in this school, what would be, because I don't want to interrupt classrooms, what's the most important one classroom for me to see? And he took me to the severe handicap room. And it was pretty neat to me that was the one room that he suggested. But I actually knew the teacher there. I'd coached her son in baseball years ago. Had a good visit. She told me a little bit about the classroom and what that means to the school. But again, he knew those students' names, those individual students that were in that severe classroom, which again, just impressed me as well. But after that, when school started again after lunchtime, he taught a class that I went and sat in on. And he was teaching them about city code, state code, and the rights and responsibilities of people, and the respect for police officers and the like. But again, I had to leave before the class was over, but I engaged in that conversation at his request, and we had a good conversation about city government. And I asked them what was missing in their life or what we could do as a city, and just told them, I said, right, here's the guy, you know, he's your friend, you like him? And they all said, yes, we do. And so that's just a very long explanation, Mayor, of a great visit that I had with our police department this last week.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate your service with public safety. Councilwoman Casperson.
I guess I'll just add a little bit to Council Martinson about the trip with the youth council up at the Capitol. I just really enjoyed being with them and being able to go to the committee hearings, meeting with different representatives. And I just feel like it's a good way to teach our youth to be involved, and the importance of them being involved in the government and the way that they can use their voice to make good changes. And so I really appreciate all that Carmen Snow and what she does in her leadership there. And so I'm glad that Council Martinson was willing to let me have that assignment.
Well, I think you beat him in an arm wrestle, if I remember right. Is that what happened?
It was several, like an arm wrestle, race, several. I don't want to keep going, but we fought for it, so I obviously won.
Ben was great, and we definitely loaded him up with a few more assignments. Councilmember Martinson, anything else? Or Casperson, Henderson. There's a little inside joke there so I've actually just added to it by saying Martinson. Now, are you, anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I know this meeting's short and maybe a little bit light, but I'll tell you what is evident is the amount of sacrifice and work that this council puts in. When they vote on an ordinance, when they vote on a resolution, they have absolutely done their homework. They've talked, they've read, they've listened, and so when we get to this point, they've all independently done their work, and I love this part when they get to share a little bit with us about their various assignments, and it's a sacrifice. They put in a lot of time, a lot of hours with their various boards and committees, and they show a lot of leadership through that. So I appreciate that. I'll be really brief with mine. We've set the date of March 21st for the State of the City. We've intentionally delayed that a little bit past February into March, and that's because we have a pretty exciting announcement that has to do with economic development that will be announced as part of that State of the City. So I've been spending a lot of time on that. I've been spending some time at the legislature, getting some appropriations for the city, for infrastructure and roads and things, spending a lot of times on roads, and probably aside from my mayoral duties is just spending a considerable amount of time on our most precious resource, which is water. And it's a pleasure for me to represent Washington and work with the other mayors and the district on that. But that's all I have. Item 9, city manager report.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Please.
Do you just have the date, but you don't have any of the details for the?
It'll likely be around 11 or noon, depending on how we decide to go forward. But tentatively 11:30, and we're looking to do that at the Washington City Community Center in the reception center room there. So we'll dial that in, but that we're just working on those details right now with Jordan and in both chambers. Jeremy.
I don't have anything to report this time, Mayor. I think the council's heard me talk plenty this week. So thanks for letting me do that, but I'm good. Thank you.
Great. We do not have need for a closed session, so I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
I think I want to wait 1 minute.
Even this out of
No.
6:30.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion by Ivy.
Second.
Second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. It's unanimous. We're adjourned.